This is like the third time I'm doing this review. The first time I just didn't like the way I was talking, I blabbered on for too long. And the second time, for some reason, the sound went off, so I basically talked for 8 minutes with dead silence on the playback. So let's hope I get it right this time. Okay, so we do have a rum from the Romaniac series today, and it is an AD Rattray Monymusk rum, 25 years old, from 1986. It was done in 2011, which was just around the time I picked it up. And at that time, I used to be able to pick up AD Rattray rums quite regularly in Calgary. Now I don't see them quite as much, and I don't even know if they do this on a regular basis, which I think has always been the failing of the Scottish whiskey makers, because they are not consistent the way independent bottlers are. The indies, most of them tend to put out annual series because their reputation rests upon that. And of course, they've got better access now than we used to back in the day. But AD Rattray, you just don't find that much. Now, this is a very old Scottish whiskey maker or whiskey blender or whiskey indie. I don't know what you want to call it. They bought from distilleries and then bottled that under their own label and put that out the door. They were founded in 1868 by Andrew Dewar and William Rattray, and they were originally olive oil importers. And of course, they dabbled in spirits from around Europe. But over time, they started to get more and more into whiskey. And in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and of course in the 2000s, they occasionally put out the odd rum like Warden MacPhail did, or Cadenhead did, or Murray McDavid for that matter. And very much like Bristol Spirits back in the day, they tended to like being at around 4 to 6%. I don't agree with that, but that was the way it was back then, so we have to just accept that and move on. They did not see a market for rums to be bottled at strength, which is to say 50% and greater. That was a province of, well, whiskeys, I suppose, right? But that was just the way it was back then. Now, of course, we have much more, we are spoiled for choice in this matter. Anyway, so we do have a 25-year-old pot still rum from Monymusk. And it is a very interesting piece of work that kind of sort of reminds me a little bit of Appleton, but not so much of the new Jamaicans, which are a little bit more ferocious in their thing. Smelling it will tell you that right off the bat. Yeah. Okay, so there are a number of other Monymusks out there, and the comparison to this, the one that reminds me of this most, is a Danish indie called Ekte, which had the number 2, the second of their releases, was also a Monymusk, but it was only 12 years old. But it was running at around 60%. The profiles of those two are very much the same, except that that one was much more pungent, much more intense, and in point of fact, it did score higher. Here, what I'm smelling is simply lighter and sweeter than that. It is a bit dry. You're going to get some glue, some good pot still action, wet cardboard. There's some chocolate oranges, bubblegum, strawberries. The syrup of a tinned can of peaches, minus the peaches, herbals, florals, and so on. Interestingly enough, there actually isn't a whole lot of funkiness going on here. That, I guess, wasn't a thing back then, which is understandable. But even by those standards, or those more permissive times, I'm actually surprised that they didn't try to torque it up just a bit, because their reputation would have depended upon doing something quite original, which this isn't. This is just, not just, but it seems like an Appleton, a good aged Appleton, more than the 12, less than the 30, like the Master Blenders Reserve, perhaps you could say, something to that effect. It's thinner and less distinct as a consequence. Tasting it reinforces that impression. I'm afraid there's no relief to be found on this one. It's light. There's a sort of dreamy, indistinct nature to it, like a dream you just can't quite wake up from, but that you kind of leaves you muzzy when you wake up. There's caramel, there's nougat, there's some nuts there, coffee grounds, which is nice. Flambéed bananas, I guess you could say. Hang on a second. Yeah, sugar water with some lemon rind. That acidity really saves it from being a complete loss. There's some brine and some red olives, which are sweeter than the green ones. It's not bad. I actually think, even for its strength, it does a good case for itself. Unfortunately, there's a certain lack of distinctiveness about it. And of course, our palates have been conditioned to some extent to expect more from Jamaicans these days, rather than that kind of middle of the road pleasing profile that we see in, well, Appleton, for example, right? And that's what this is. Perhaps that was a sign of the times back then, and now if they were to try it, they would do something a little bit more experimentative. It's hard to say. But to me, when you compare it against the other Monymusks that I've tried, like the Ector number 2, which was a 12-year-old from 2003, I think I scored that one around 88 points. There was the Rum Nation Supreme Lord 8, that was from 1991, about 55, 56%. Also a 25-year-old, man, that one scored 89 points. I really like that one. And Habitation Velier, of course, did a 9-year-old EMB mark that they released in 2019 or 2020 that also scored a relatively solid 86, 87 points. So I'm just showing you these to give you sort of like a comparison of how this one is okay, but kind of falls behind some of these others. And I'm sure there are others out there that have tasted, or other people out there who've tasted more Monymusks than I have, and may or may not make the same comparison. Be that as it may, it's a light, easy drink. It absolutely should not be mixed. I don't think it serves any purpose to try. Have it with a cube ice or something. It's not cocktail fodder. This really is a good sipping rum. And if you can find it at a reasonable cost, I mean, I bought mine about a decade or more ago, and I know I paid less than $100 for mine Canadian. If you can find it at a reasonable cost, then by all means go get it. Just know what it is that you're getting, of course, as always. That's it for this Romaniacs review, and there is another Jamaican in my cards that I really want to talk about, but we will try to do that the next time. And until then, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.